The cost of living is so high today because the Federal Reserve and the federal government have destroyed the purchasing power of the dollar.
In the course of the last century, they have converted this nation from a nation of independent freeholders to a nation of employees. And they're just one step away from being serfs.
Most people spend the great bulk of their money for taxes, interest, and inflation. And all of that money goes to these two groups that comprise the cartel and their partner, the federal government. It's not a coincidence.
The Federal Reserve was created by Congress in 1913, and it was entrusted with the power granted originally to the Congress by the U.S. Constitution to coin money and regulate the value thereof.
So if Congress used its legal authority to shut down the Federal Reserve System, the American people would be much better off. Who owns the Federal Reserve?
It's secret, and we can't find out what's happening. But the Congress created it, and it's not authorized in the Constitution.
The government borrows money from a private corporation using the name Federal that prints United States on it, and then it pays back to the Fed, which is owned by private banks. We don't know who all those private banks are. The money that the government is paying back to the private bankers is the money that comes from you and me.
Why in the world would the American government borrow money and pay fees on it when it has the authority to make the money itself interest-free, interest-free, interest-free?
The government works for a private bank, and the private bank works for its owners, the true masters.
The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. I've never seen a full list of ownership for the Fed. I don't think anybody has.
A decision was made. Let's get all the debt up, let's move the jobs abroad, and instead of re-engineering your skills, we're going to dumb down America, and so the middle class will disappear. The middle class will disappear. The middle class will disappear.
Really what most of the people in this country have become is food for the debt machine.
When a person borrows money, it puts a noose around their neck and makes them servant to the lender, which is exactly what the Federal Reserve System is designed to do. If the American people ever allow the banks to control the issuance of their currency, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Thomas Jefferson. So the Federal Reserve is actually an illegal entity functioning within government.
It's illegal, and what we have given to this so-called agency is the authority to counterfeit money.
Do you have any points of view about the Federal Reserve and how the Federal Reserve operates?
They just enter something on a computer. Oh, you need 20 billion today. Here's 20 billion, but they got that out of thin air. It came out of thin air, it goes to the Treasury then pays the bills.
Isn't it true that the word income is not defined anywhere in the Internal Revenue Code?
The law says that the government has a right to tax income from any source derived.
So, but the word income is not defined in the code. It just says income without a definition
That's right.
of what income is.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah.
But there are many different kinds of taxes. Well, how can an American citizen know what income is if the code doesn't define it? If they're paying an income
Because
tax...
the courts have all defined it.
Do you remember what constitutional attorney Edwin Vieira said?
The definition of income in the Constitution was given in the Eisner versus Macomber case, and it turns on gains or profits that are made from some activity.
So the Supreme Court has ruled income is not wages, it's not labor, it's gain from corporate activity. I believe that a man's labor is his private property.
That's your view, but it's not the law.
The Supreme Court's even said your labor is your private property. When I go to work for somebody, it's a trade. It's an even exchange. I do some work, you give me some money. We've been brainwashed. People have been told, that you need this income tax system to fund government, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, my question is, well, if that's true, how did we fund government from 1776 to 1913?
The main purpose of the income tax is not to raise revenue, but to redistribute wealth and to control society.
A lot of people might say, well, gee, if there wasn't an income tax, what would happen to education? They don't understand that education is paid for the most part, out of state and local taxes, your property tax. People might say, well, how are we going to build and maintain our highways? If there's no money coming into the government, we need our highways. There is a tax on every gallon of gasoline that people buy. Proceeds from the income tax do not pay for highways.
I sincerely believe the banking institutions having the issuing power of money are more dangerous to liberty than standing armies. Thomas Jefferson.
You must understand the Federal Reserve is a cartel made up of the major banks in America, and they are the ones that are running the show, not the federal government.
This is something that people eventually, I hope, will get sick and tired of and say, enough is enough.